Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm your host, Todd Blackstock. We have a great show for you today, as Chris Roseman from the St. Louis Sports Commission will join us in studio to discuss exciting news in St. Louis sports and fill us in on some excellent events coming to the STL. Our Inside Sports flashback will look into the life of the first black football player ever at the University of Missouri, and reporter Melanie Steen will join me on set to give us an update on the XFL, MLS, and a follow-up to her recent youth wrestling stories. So stay with us for this and much more coming up next on Inside Sports. And welcome to the show. St. Louis continues to bring major sporting events to town. The PGA Golf Championship in 2018 was such a resounding success that another tour stop is set for our town. According to Dan Reardon of the KMOX Radio, the PGA Champions Tour will play at Norwood Hills Country Club in 2020. The nearly 100-year-old North St. Louis course hosted the 1948 PGA Golf Championship and two PGA Tour events in the 1970s. It's a great course, and the date of the event is forthcoming. On our last episode of Inside Sports, our flashback highlighted the career of former Blues goalie Grant Fuhr. And now a motion picture depicting the career of this Hall of Fame goalie is set to be released in October, titled Making Coco, the Grant Fuhr Story. There will be a special screening of this Tuesday, October 1st at 7 p.m. at Ballpark Village. The red carpet will roll out at 6 p.m. with photo opportunities, and a Q&A will follow with a screening, with Grant Fuhr and Kelly Chase, with Blues announcer Darren Pang moderating. This event will open theatrically in St. Louis Friday, October 4th at Marcus Theaters. Wayne Gretzky called Fuhr the greatest goalie in history, and Grant did have some ups and downs throughout his career, so this should be a compelling evening. Well, speaking of compelling, the St. Louis Sports Commission continues to bring a wide variety of events to St. Louis. And joining us now in studio is the Vice President, Chris Roseman. Chris, thanks a lot for joining us today on Inside Sports. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Todd, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, think about St. Louis sports right now blowing up. I mean, who cares about the Rams leaving? We've got the St. Louis Blues winning the Stanley Cup, and we've got the NHL All-Star Game on the heels of that coming up in a few months.
It's amazing what sports has done for St. Louis, and especially downtown St. Louis. And you know, we're on quite a roll. You know, we just had the Stanley Cup, of course, and the All-Star Game's coming here in January, and then we've got you know, all kinds. We have NCAA basketball and Missouri Valley basketball. So we got a lot going on.
You know, I'm thinking back. We did a story with Chris Zimmerman and Jim Cavanaugh a few months back on Inside Sports, and the St. Louis Blues did so much renovation to the Enterprise Center. The city of St. Louis kicked in a lot of money for that, millions of dollars, but it seems to have really paid off because first you get the an All-Star Game awarded to you, and that wouldn't have happened if St. Louis and the, you know, all the factors coming together to do the renovations on the arena.
That goes back a ways, back to when Missouri was admitted to the SEC. The SEC was looking at St. Louis to possibly host the SEC basketball tournament, the men's basketball tournament. And you know, the SEC has high standards, and they want the best for their folks that are coming to attend the event. So, you know, those renovations that Enterprise Center did, that did back 15, 16. I mean, the beginnings of those renovations were huge. To get us to this point, we are hosting those major events in our town at sometimes not so busy times of the year. I think we had the entire state of Kentucky here back in 17 with the SEC men's basketball tournament, and you know, that continues to ring true to this day. Look at what's happening with the All-Star Game coming here in January. The Missouri Valley Conference renewed its contract to host their annual event here every March. NCAA's came, awarded their first and second rounds here to St. Louis this March. And in USA Gymnastics and the USOPC now, the apparently an Olympic Committee, would not have brought that event here to St. Louis if it had not been for those renovations that just occurred. That's
amazing that we are allowed to get these events. I know the St. Louis Sports Commission works very hard, and you work in great conjunction, a symbiotic relationship with the Missouri Valley. I mean, Doug Elgin and Jack, Mike Kern, Patty Viverito, all those guys, and you guys always seem to be kind of like coexisting at all these events. We see many of the members of the Sports Commission, and I'd have to say that the Valley really puts on a great tournament.
They do. And the sports commission, the Blues, the Cardinals, all the sport entities in town, everyone comes together and is one. The St. Louis Sports Commission is only a staff of 9. So we have no business saying that we're the ones that do all this stuff. We're just a part of the process. So working with the Valley, working with Jack and Doug to bring NCAA basketball here, working with the University of Missouri and Enterprise Center to bring NCAA wrestling championships here that are going to be here for like the 9th time, since 2000 and the year 2021. The relationships that we have with the community, not just with the venues themselves, with the hotel community, with the attractions, with the business community to make these things happen. It's a great, wonderful community that comes together, that steps up every time. And, don't be surprised if records are set next year with more and more championships coming to town and ticket sales and support and all kinds of fun stuff. So we're just at the top of the pyramid.
How exciting is it to have the Missouri Valley Arch Madness tournament here, and then right back after that, that NCAA big dance event?
Yeah, the Missouri Valley Conference staff, it's just a lot like the Sports Commission. It's not a big staff. I mean, there's only a handful of them over there that make all those things work. So we work with them and Enterprise Center to make all those, to check all the boxes, so to speak, to make sure the tickets are sold, to make sure the floor gets down, to make sure it's a great experience for the student athletes and for their coaches and administrators and fans that come in, the media too, to make that go. So it's a wonderful team effort to make it all happen.
Communications Director Brent Schulman was telling me how important the Olympic trials are going to be next year. It's a very special event. All the top gymnasts in the country, Simone Biles, and all the great gymnasts will be here, and whoever wins here, stamps their ticket.
Yep. It's the Olympic trials. And, St. Louis, we were fortunate in 2016 to host the men's Olympic trials. And so we had the men's Olympic trials in 16 over at Chaffetz Arena, another great venue that we have to showcase. And then we had the women's national championship. So yes, we had the women were here, but they weren't stamping their tickets, so to speak, to go on to what was in Rio. And in 2020, for St. Louis to compete and outbid and win that event, to come to this town, is going to be unbelievable. We were able to celebrate our Olympic heritage. 1904, a lot of people forget, that we hosted the Olympic Games. We're an Olympic city here in St. Louis. And for us to celebrate that legacy, that heritage that we have with those beautiful rings on the campus of Washington University, and to celebrate all those things Olympic, all those crazy stories that came out of those games, and that'll all culminate with with that Sunday night, sending off that the women's team gets sent off on Sunday night, and the men's the night before. So, St. Louis, a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit, but I think we have a wonderful city, a wonderful community. It sets up well to host championships. It's got a nice tight footprint, with the hotels and the venues and the restaurants, and what Bob O'Loughlin and LHM has done with Union Station, and what's going to happen with the MLS stadium coming on board. Holy cow! The future looks really bright for downtown St. Louis.
It seems like there's a tremendous transformation going on right now. You look at the artist renderings at Union Station. The Ferris wheel is up. It's illuminated. They're putting the cars on right now. So that's like another part of the skyline. I was at a Cardinal baseball game the other night, and you see all the renovations. You see the apartments going up, and the retail, and more skyscrapers and more hotels coming to the city. It's booming.
Yeah. Well, $8 billion, I think, is the number that's been stated as far as the investment in our community. $8 billion. I mean, that's amazing. And remember, the events happen, right? So you got your 4 events that happen with the Olympic trials, so to speak. And there's full days where people need something else to do besides go to Enterprise Center to watch the event. So, with the new Arch Grounds, $380 million there, with Soldiers Memorial, with what's going on there, all these great attractions, and like I said, the aquarium is going to be amazing, for us to host. And not just that, the NHL All-Star Game is going to come. There's just 2 games, but there's all kinds of ancillary activities that are going to be very important to entertain our guests when they're here. So St. Louis is on the international stage, especially with the PGA Championships you mentioned, especially with what just happened with the Stanley Cup, and now with all the events that are happening next year, the Olympic trials. It's just one thing after another, and St. Louis should be really proud of itself for stepping up and hosting these events.
There's certainly a big buzz in the city. The St. Louis Sports Commission has annual events too. It does every year, the 5K Biz Dash. And I think one of my favorite events of the whole year are the Mizzou Awards. What are we going to be looking forward to? Can you give us a little sneak preview on the Mizzou Awards this year?
Well,
you know, how it's going to go down, or maybe some of the recipients?
The Mizzou Awards are just an incredible jewel that we have here in St. Louis that we're so happy to showcase. You know, I think that event has been around for 15, 16 years, so we've hosted that. It's made its track, and this year it's going to be on national TV. I mean, it's going on national CBS, where, you know, we're not only going to showcase it to St. Louis and our region, but now the nation's going to see what kind of community St. Louis is as far as our civility and how we respect and treat sports and those around it, and we highlight those that exemplify great sportsmanship. So, do I know the stories? I don't know yet.
I don't know if they've been picked yet, or
yeah,
it's probably in the process with Solomon and everyone.
Yep, they're all busy making preparations, and the show is going to take a next step up again, right? So it's just everything continues to evolve in the right direction, and with the Mizzou Awards being held it's always the Saturday before Thanksgiving down at Stiefel Theater, and you know, tickets are on sale now, so be sure to go to Ticketmaster for those tickets, and it only holds 3,000 at Stiefel Theater, so it'll sell out, and so we'd love to have a great crowd there.
You've got golf coming next year as well. Up at Lindenwood, there's a nice event.
You know, well, we host NCAA championships. We have this great event coming to town, and it's not basketball, but it's called the NCAA Division II Festival. 1,000 athletes are going to be in our community for a week, and it includes golf, tennis, and women's lacrosse. And so we've got all these festivities going on. We've got all these great parties going on, and we're gonna have these great kids and putting on a great show for the student athletes, and you know, we're going to show them a great time. And it's based in Lindenwood University. We're going to have the golf portion, the men's and women golf championships are going to be at St. Albans. And we're going to have tennis down at Dwight Davis, you know, home of the Dwight Davis Tennis Center, and with the finals are going to be at Lindenwood University. So that's another event it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be great for our economy, you know, with those kids and families, you know, spending that amount of time here, and looking forward to put on a great show. You
know, people are really missing tennis in these parts, and Dwight Davis is a great spot over there. We don't have the professional tennis anymore. But you guys are bringing a tennis event, kind of to maybe to get the ball rolling again for some excellent tennis events. Any more activities or events coming up that we didn't touch on here in the near future?
I think right now it's just it's the NCAA bid processes right now. So that process goes from 23 to 26, 2023 to 26. And the only thing we have to remember is that support for the NCAA championships and those like it are important. So whenever we could sell out a building, it raises the attention of St. Louis and puts us on the map as far as a city that supports its sports. So come on out and support these events, and we'd love to see you at the various venues next year.
And we'd like to thank all the corporate sponsors as well for all their support with the St. Louis Sports Commission and their support for St. Louis. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Chris Roseman, Vice President, St. Louis Sports Commission. Now it's time for our Inside Sports Flashback. Today we'll look at the career of the first African-American football player at the University of Missouri, told by Kim Hudson and produced by Peter Foggy.
The impact of a trailblazer is never realized during the present, but in the generations that follow. In 1957, Norris Stevenson was only concerned with the impact on the football.
Coming to Missouri was a decision to be made as it relates to football. I didn't think there was anything else necessary. I'm gonna get the classes. I'm gonna get those. And then other than that, it was football. Did I know I was gonna be the only African American there? No. I wanted to play football.
The University of Missouri football team had been organized and segregated since 1890, when the Vashon grad chose Missouri over Indiana.
Everybody was due to report to college. I changed my mind from Indiana to Missouri.
Innocence, along with his love for football, served as blinders to the fact that Stevenson became the first African American to play football at Mizzou.
I didn't particularly like it, but at the same time, it gave me an opportunity to play football. Okay, And that's it. I wanted to play. I knew I could play there. I knew I could even start there. At Indiana, I thought I could play. So yeah, I know it sounds terrible, but the truth of the matter is, that's it.
Although Stevenson was able to foster a few relationships, that spring in 1957 was especially challenging.
In the spring, I'm the only African American on the team out of about 100 players. So whatever the drill is and whatever, I'm right in the middle of the thing. So you get a feel, if nothing more, from the standpoint of you're starting to feel like there's one and then there's 60. Some guys tried to be friendly with me, and I said try because, let's put it this way, as I said, I didn't do a very good job either. But by that time, you just want to stay. You're just going to stay in one piece. You're going to go to class, and you're going to stay in one piece.
The journey of a trailblazer can be a lonely one, but for Stevenson, football was his salvation.
That's it. You got football. You can't imagine how much of a lifesaver that was. How many times did I just simply want to go home?
Dan Devine coached the Missouri Tigers from 1958 until 1970.
After sitting out a year due to freshman eligibility rules, in comes new coach Dan Devine, who would later prove to be influential in Stevenson's life.
When Dan comes, things change to a degree because you knew he was at Arizona State. Just came from a place where he had a lot of African American players, and they were good.
During Stevenson's years on campus, events of that time created an uneasy climate for all of those involved.
You gotta remember, integration was in 1 year. It was in his first year now in the schools, public schools. Okay, the University of Missouri had never had an African American. So you had some things that were growing and developing. By the time, surprisingly enough, by the time you're junior, senior, sometimes it got out of hand.
On deck to root for the Middies.
The climate of the times was also the impetus for a series of incidents that would later have a profound effect on both Stevenson and Devine.
In the Orange Bowl, we could not, Mel West and I could not go and pick up our awards at the country club where they're holding the awards. Everybody else could, but we couldn't. They came in and told us about halfway through the program that we were going to have to leave. African Americans were not allowed on the island after 8 o'clock. So they gave us our award, walked over and gave us our award, and escorted us out. The thing that hurt me most, Coach Devine did not come and tell us. He sent a coach. Now that was the hard part. It still hurts.
Coach Devine still couldn't face the players himself. For decades, Stevenson carried a burden of searing, yet silent resentment. But for that same time, the two men stayed in touch, mostly because of Coach Devine's relentless efforts.
He had begun to make some movement in relationship to the extent, even with the players that I play with, when we go back up maybe on front of business, we notice that everybody's kind of warm. Okay? So right at it, when did it started happening? It started probably just about the end of our time. By the time we're all seniors, we're starting to really kind of feel a little different about it. You can feel it, you can hear it.
However, an unspoken wound still remained.
When we would go out to dinner or something like that, he would start maybe trying to say it, and I need to just talk to you about something, and never got around to it. At the end of it, said, I just said there was a conversation that we should have had, but we didn't.
During Coach Devine's last days, a last request became the grandest gesture of them all.
I mean, he had cancer, and he dies, and he leaves me a note, do my eulogy. I asked his son, what did he want me to say? He said I would know, and that was it. Yeah, I knew.
Coach passed away in May 2002. Stevenson, by then an ordained CME pastor, got one more message, this time loud and clear from Devine.
He needed to tell me something. And in the final analysis, he told me. He told me. And what he also did with me was just allow me to let go. I was angry for 30 years. He didn't need to say it anymore. He didn't need to say it, and I think he got to a point where he understood that. But it's the kind of thing where I want to make it mean that.
In the end, the Trailblazers' path came full circle. It led to home.
Whenever I go back up now, it's happiness is.
Today, Mizzou has honored its son with the Norris Stevenson Plaza of Champions at Faurot Field. The field, the campus, for which the journey of a pioneer began. The impact of a trailblazer realized.
And understand, and I'm going to say it because I believe it. I was meant to be there. Did it mean that I could do something somebody else did? Yes. Could they've done it as well? Probably better. But I'm glad it was me.
What a compelling story. Unbelievable. Well, joining us now on the set is Inside Sports reporter Melanie Steen. And Melanie, as a minority woman, what do you take away from a story like this? I mean, it's definitely a tearjerker, and you see what Norris Stevenson had to go through.
Yeah, so many great takeaways, Todd. I mean, the fact that he was 1 out of 100 players, and he was the only African American. I mean, just the fact that he even stepped into that role, and then just the fact that it didn't get better over his college career. I mean, that's just the fact that he was so dedicated and he really hung in there. I mean, that really says a lot.
Yeah, and he couldn't go to the awards ceremony. I mean, oh man, it just hurts.
Yeah, but I'm glad to see that the school stepped up and they memorialized him and the contributions that he made. So it was really, really touching to see that. And hopefully, the old wounds he had with Coach Devine, those were all healed after that final kind of act of goodwill.
Well, Melanie, you've been in the sports world. You've been a news anchor in Springfield, Illinois, Metro Sports over the years. I remember you were working with Vicki Pimentel and Harry Schrader, covering a lot of sports events. Do you have any favorite sports events that you've covered over the years?
We were just talking off camera about when the All-Star game came here to St. Louis. That was one of my favorites. We were down there, doing a show outside, and that was a lot of fun. But there's been so many.
Well, think about it. Almost 20 years ago, we were covering the women's Final Four at then Scott Trade Center all over the whole city, and we're still banging it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. I mean, some more in recent memory. Even though we've had the XFL and the MLS, I mean, those have all been some great stories, great news for our town. I love doing the stories about the kids out there, the high schoolers, the up and comers, and just the passion that they have for their respective sports.
I enjoyed your wrestling stories. I know you did some follow-ups, wrestling and boxing. You seem to be gravitating towards that, and you see what the coaches and trainers have to go through. What did you get to take away from some of your recent stories on Inside Sports, from just how hard and dedicated the coaches and trainers are?
Well, I have to say that the coaches are very dedicated. Coach Tracy Henderson, he's a boxing coach at Dunn Marquette. He's coached over 700 young people over 5 years. So, I mean, he's made a huge impact in the boxing world here locally. And just, his up-and-comers who've been trying out for the Junior Olympics, and they've just made great strides. With regard to women in wrestling, Kayla Hughes, she's the only female at Alton High School who's currently wrestling. She just started her senior year, and I think she's going to pursue it in college as well. But she tells me that she wants to be a nurse. That's her ultimate goal. It's not to be a professional wrestler, but she wants to be a nurse. She wants to help people and heal people.
That's neat. It's really nice blending the big time stories like the MLS coming to town, as well as some of the human interest stories like this and Norris Stevenson. So really appreciate your great work.
Yeah,
I know that you're super excited about the MLS coming to St. Louis. You've got a female half owner.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's certainly something that is groundbreaking. I'm hoping that this will be the start of more women, female own professional teams, not only with the soccer, but also in other professional sports. So I'm hoping this is the start of a really good trend.
Hopefully we'll get to cover some of these events and stay busy working. You did some fun work with the XFL.
Yeah.
Oliver Luck, you got to meet him, former NFL quarterback. Andrew Luck, one of the stars of the league, recently retiring at 29. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it was interesting when I interviewed Commissioner Luck. We had talked about how the game had changed since he was playing in his playing days and then with his son playing. And he said, the players are bigger, stronger, faster now, which is one thing. But he said he likes that the sport has actually gotten a lot safer, and then, a month later, his son retires because of an injury. So it's like, oh, okay, well, the game is safer in some regards, but, people still get hurt.
What do you think of the name, the Battlehawks?
I love the name, the Battlehawks.
It's become with mixed emotions,
Yeah, exactly.
I think anything with Hawks, you think it's Chicago Blackhawks, they're our big rivalry, but, so you like it?
Yeah, I do like it. I think I think it was the LA Times newspaper. They don't like it so much. They ranked.
Who cares about
They
that?
ranked the names of the 8 teams for the XFL, and the number 1 team was not us. We were number 7 out of number 8. So they like our
That's that
our
Coast
name.
bias.
They don't like our name very much, but that's okay. But that's okay.
And Jonathan Hayes, the former NFL player.
Yeah.
He's going to be the head coach. You got to meet all these guys, and I know when you do your stories, you can't always get everything out in it because the time constraints. So what are your thoughts of him?
Yeah, no, I like him. He was very, very nice, very down to earth, and that was something that Commissioner Luck said really kind of put him head and shoulders above the other people that had interviewed for the job. Our new coach previously had played under Bob Stoops. So there's that connection there. I asked him, I said, you guys once coached together at Oklahoma, and now you guys are going to be going up against each other because Bob Stoops is the head coach for the Dallas team. So I said, you guys are going to be going up against each other. Have you talked? And he said, yeah, we have talked. He said, there's no trash talking. It's all mutual respect.
That's neat. Great stuff, Melanie. Thank you for all this insight. Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
I talked to Commissioner Luck. I said, we see you here at the tryouts. Are we going to see you when the team actually starts playing here in St. Louis? And he said, absolutely. He said, I love St. Louis. I love the Midwest. And he said, you guys will see me at a lot of games.
All right, great stuff. Thank you for coming on the set with us.
You bet.
Got a rose with a thorn up here now. Hey, folks, that's our show for today. We especially like to thank Chris Roseman and Melanie Steen for dropping by. A big shout out to our STL TV staff, and we especially like to thank you for watching Inside Sports. I'm Todd Blackstock. We'll see you next time.